In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to factor trinomials, and all the trinomials will be in a similar form of x squared plus bx plus c. In other words, there is no a x squared plus bx plus c because none of these will have a leading coefficient other than just 1. Because once you put a number in front, it does kind of change things. So all of them in today's lesson will be in this form. So before we start factoring, let's just do a real quick review of how to FOIL. So FOIL is when you are multiplying two binomials. And you multiply the first terms, so x times x is x squared. Outside terms, x times 6. Inside terms, 3 times x. And last terms, 3 times 6. And then we combine our like terms. So x squared plus 9x plus 18. Now, factoring you could think of, instead of multiplying, is now dividing. It's going backwards. Now we're going to start with a trinomial, and we have to figure out, well, what two binomials, when multiplied together, give you that trinomial. So that's where you kind of have to start breaking it apart. So let's say we don't know this. And if we just had this, we would have to think about what two binomials gives us that trinomial. Let's see, if we have x squared, how did we get x squared? We had to do x times x in the FOIL. And then these second numbers, how did we get 18? Well, let's see, we had to multiply those two numbers to get 18, but then what about 9? If you remember, those two numbers added together, gave you 9. So that is the idea of factoring, finding two numbers that when multiplied together give you the c value, but when added together give you the b value. Alright, so here is our first trinomial to factor. And here is the little hint. You have to find factors of c that add up to b, and that helps you fill in your binomials. So I always like to start with my parentheses. If the first term is a squared, you get that by doing a times a. And then to fill up the numbers, fill up the spaces here with numbers, we have to look at all of the factors of 30. So let's think of all the numbers that when multiplied together give you 30. 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. So those are the factors of 30. Which one of those sets adds up to 13? Multiplies to 30 but adds to 13. And as you can see here, 3 and 10. So I'm just going to place in plus 3 and plus 10. It does not matter which order, so I could write a plus 10 times a plus 3. And you can always check your answers. If you were to go FOIL this, a times a is a squared. Outside and inside would be 3a, 10a, gives us 13a, and last is 30. So to check these, all you have to do is FOIL them and make sure you get the original answer. Alright, here is another example. It's the same idea. Once you start throwing in negatives, it does make it a little bit trickier, but not too bad. So same idea, we need to find factors of c that add up to b. So let's see, y squared plus y minus 20. Let's start with, get my parentheses on here, and I'll know that I'll have y and y, because they multiply to get to y squared. So I need to list all my factors of negative 20 in this case. So off to the side, negative 20. So this time I could have negative 1 times 20, or 1 times negative 20. Negative 2 times 10, or 2 times negative 10. Negative 4 times 5, or 4 times negative 5. So if I look at all of these factors, which set is going to add up to be a positive 1? In this case, it would be negative 4 and 5. So I can place in a minus 4 and a positive 5. Can do a quick check, FOIL it out. So y times y, see, outside would be 5y minus 4y. And last would be negative 20, which these would combine to 1. So it checks. Alright, so we're going to do these two problems together, and then I'm going to give you a couple to try on your own. And before we even start them, I just want you to think about, what does it mean if that last term is positive but the middle term is negative? And what is it going to mean if both of these terms are negative? If we go back up to this top one, so I need factors of 45. Factors of 45. But if my middle term is negative, that means that my two factors are both going to be negative. Negative 1 times negative 45, because the double negatives give me a positive 45, and if I add them, it will still be negative. Alright, so let's come up with my other factors. I have negative 3 times negative 15, and negative 5 times negative 9. So which one of these sets adds up to negative 18? It would be this middle one, negative 3 and negative 15. So in my parentheses, because it's x squared, I have x, and then I just have to plug in minus 3 minus 15. Alright, and the last one, if your final term is negative, the only way to get a negative when you're multiplying is if one is positive and one is negative. So, negative 1 times 18, or 1 times negative 18, negative 2 times 9, or 2 times negative 9, negative 3 times 6, or 3 times negative 6. So, looking here, which one of these sets adds up to negative 3? And it would be negative 6 and positive 3. So in parentheses, I have the variable p, and I just have to plug in plus 3 and minus 6. It's helpful to do just a quick check. Do the FOIL. P squared minus 6p plus 3p minus 18. Middle terms, they will combine to a negative 3, so it checks. Here are the last two problems of this lesson. I want you to write them down, pause the video, and try them on your own, and then come back to check your answers. For the first one, you should have gotten m plus 9 times m minus 3. Just remember you can flip-flop those so that it's m minus 3 times m plus 9. And then for the last one, you have an x minus 3 and an x minus 12. So there is your lesson on factoring trinomials, which you do not have a leading coefficient greater than 1. Good luck!